Excuse me! Taxi!
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
You know, when I was growing up,
Look at me!
for a while when I was in high school, my career goal was to be the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of a major company. I just thought that'd be really, really cool. The ultimate achievement, really, in American capitalism, in a way, right? When you think about it. There was a guy, a neighbor, actually, who was a CEO, and I became fascinated with him. But you had to do all this business stuff and all these courses that I wasn't particularly interested in, so there went that dream. Jay Jackson, living the dream. He is the chairman and CEO of Abacus Global Management. Abacus Global Management is reshaping financial planning around the most personal data point, your lifespan. It's amazing. It's an amazing concept. It's amazing practice. I am here with Jay Jackson, chairman and CEO of Abacus Global Management. Congratulations on being the boss. How are you, Jay?
I am awesome. Thank you, Greg. And you know, being the boss isn't always that much fun, but it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, I know. I imagine that you got, all the problems, got to go to your desk and that kind of thing. But that's not the customer's problem. The customer's always right. Tell us a little bit about Abacus Global Management overall.
Sure. Abacus Global Management, we founded over 20 years ago. We're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And what we do at its core, we're an alternative asset manager, but what we buy is maybe one of the best forms of credit out there, and that is we acquire life insurance policies. And we do that by creating liquidity for seniors or policyholders who currently have their life insurance that might have served its purpose or they're thinking about letting it go. And then we monetize that in today's value for them. And then ultimately we put those into large asset management funds, and we manage over $3 billion in assets under management. And it's been a terrific uncorrelated asset to be invested in.
You know, it sounds cool. It also sounds very reputable, right? Because sometimes insurance and you get these TV commercials and whatnot. You guys are legit on the New York Stock Exchange. The conversations we should be having with, say, our loved ones about financial planning and retirement. What would you recommend? What should we talk about that's not being talked about?
Here's what's not being talked about right now when it comes to financial planning. How long are you going to be in retirement? Right? Shouldn't that be the key component? Like, I went to a major firm who looks at even some of my own account, and ultimately they told me, they said, Jay, we're running this plan out to age 95. Now, I'm 6'5". You know, there's never been someone ever over 6'5" to live to age 95, by the way, in human history. And how is it on earth that is the type of data that somebody would use? It's just kind of bad data out there. So I think the first question that if you have a loved one, you should be asking yourself is, let's address the number one fear out there, which is running out of money in retirement. And the best way to better understand that is how long you're going to be in retirement. Understand your lifespan. Pull the medical files. Get current underwriting. Those are the things that Abacus does that really separates us. Because how do you know how you should be allocating your money, Greg? Shouldn't you have a better understanding of how long you're going to allocate the money? And I think that's where financial planning is changing, these customized solutions.
So that's fascinating, by the way. If you're 6'5", you will not see the age of 95. I'm sorry, but you can enjoy the view from up until then. How do we, and this is a side note, by the way, why is it? Why is it that people who live very, very old tend to be on the shorter side or the thinner side, short and thin?
Yeah, I mean, I short and lean, and the way I think about it is it's just a different engine, right? You know, it's the equivalent of a Cadillac Escalade versus, you know, a smaller, more efficient vehicle. And the smaller, more efficient vehicle is going to have a longer lifespan because you don't have as many things that can go wrong. For example, you know, when you think about how much distance traveled to just pump your blood through your heart, think about the extra wear and tear that puts on that body. And so, you know, it's taller and larger people aren't built to last as long as somebody who's a little more compact. And we've seen that happen over history. This is a crazy fact. Like, there hadn't been a centurion over 6 foot tall until really, you know, just in fact recently where we saw that happen for the first time. And so, you know, like, we're all thinking about how we're going to live forever, but instead, shouldn't we be planning for what we're going to do while we're there?
It's so wild. My wife's cousin cousin slash uncle is 105, and yeah, he's 5'6". He's very small. Yeah,
Right.
he's a Holocaust survivor, by the way. So, all right. By the way, this data is fascinating. You have so much of it. You can pinpoint. You can make
Right.
these estimates. What is your accuracy rate? Because I mean,
Sure.
How do you? Yeah, do you have a batting average?
Well, we do, and it's really high. But typically, what happens is it becomes very predictable as you get older. It's less predictable when you're younger, right? When you're 50 and 60, you've got a billion probabilities. But the thing that we say to everybody is that your lifespan is not a straight line. It's an arc of probabilities, and you are in control of it. And you talked about that. You want to be the boss, right? Be the boss of your own life. Be the boss of the asset that matters the very, very most, right? Which is your lifespan. Time is the most valuable asset you have. Shouldn't you do everything you can to enhance it? And so when you look at what's accurate, you get to somebody in their late 70s, early 80s, that life arc becomes more predictable because they have certain impairments that are happening that you can predict and measure that against actual mortalities that have occurred. But man, you can make a difference before then if you better understand the value of time and the value of what that lifespan looks like, right? People struggle with investing for retirement, typically, Greg, because they don't know what they're buying. But if you place a real value on it and you could say, hey, look, like this is actually what this is going to look like for me and have that conversation, all of a sudden saving rates go up significantly higher.
So let's pretend I got a neighbor who happens to be 79 years old, and you figure, and he's got, like regular, did okay. Maybe he's got a little pension. He's got life insurance for his, standard life insurance. And you guys figure out he's going to live to the age of 87. What should he do, and what can you do for him?
Sure. There's a couple things he has to keep in mind right away. Is that, first of all, he better understands what his life arc is. He's looking at approximately 8 to 10 years in remaining life. How should he be allocating his assets, right? So to ensure he doesn't run out of capital. But it probably means that he should also be dedicating some additional resources towards his health care, right? Because now you have a cleaner understanding of how long you're going to remain in retirement. You're probably going to spend more money. The fault is a lot of people underspend. They won't get that health care. They won't get that need that they have met because they're fearful that, oh my gosh, I won't have money, so I'm not going to do that expense. Medicare is not an expense. Taking care of yourself should not be seen as an expense. And I think that's one of the first things I would share with them is take this kind of purpose-driven approach to your financial planning, particularly as you get older, and you should do this for your parents. Tell your parents, guys, I don't need a lot of money left for me. Spend this on yourselves, whether that's vacation or medical treatment.
I hope they have a little bit of nest egg.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Greg, if they don't have a nest egg, they're moving back in with you. You don't want that either.
No, I know. I think my parents, they're so generous, and they're so they live very frugal lives, and I love them so much. I'm so blessed. When you have a client and you tell them, I mean, you get all their health information and you compare it to all the data that you have, and you have incredible data. What is their reaction when you tell them, hey, we think this is your life expectancy?
Gosh, that's a great question, and it's surprising, the answer. And this happens almost 100% of the time. The first thing they'll say to me, like in the example you said, 97 to 87, the response is always the same. No way am I living that long. No chance. You're overestimating, which is the exact opposite of what people might think they might say. And it's generally because they don't feel very good. Haven't been necessarily taking great care of themselves. They're on several medications. They're in pain. And there's a lesson to be learned in that, right? Like, if I can give you the most valuable thing there is in the world, and that's time, that latter decile of your life, that 80s, all of a sudden you're functioning, you're in less pain. What an amazing gift, right? And I think that's a big lesson to be learned from the whole takeaway of when you understand lifespan. We all think that, we're going to live forever. But when you get there, you're saying to yourself, gosh, I don't feel good about where I am today. And it's evidence, right? Like, there's a lot of evidence out there that supports that in general, our seniors in the United States are not very happy. It's the leading suicide rate by population are people over the age of 75.
I had no idea. Really? That's sad.
Yeah, it's absolute tragedy. And it's, a lot of it's caused by self-harm. When you think about elder abuse cases, most of the time it's self-harm. They're not taking care of their meds. And by the way, these people come from all walks of life. It could be your neighbor, right? It just could be somebody that is sitting there saying to themselves that, hey, look, I don't feel good. And you can make an impact on that, right? They need community, they need communication. But when you think about your lifespan and you apply this to yourself, answer this question. Is that how you want to view the world when you're 80? I hope not. I don't. And so start taking those things into account today.
It's that old phrase, new lease on life. I feel like that's what you're providing here in a way.
We are. We are.
Abacus is on the stock exchange. What is your symbol?
We trade under the ticker symbol A like Apple, B like boy, X X-ray, ABX.
ABX. That's very cool. And people can go to abacusgm.com. Abacus, like the abacus that the Japanese use as a calculator. Abacusgm.com. Jay Jackson, fascinating, important, useful. Final thoughts, sir.
You know what? We're all in control of our own destiny, regardless of your age. And what I would say is ask yourself this. What would your 80-year-old self ask you to do right now? Probably save more, right? Eat better, exercise. Those three things. Listen to your 80-year-old self, and you're going to have some amazing outcomes later in life.
I got to write this question down. That's an amazing thing. What would your 80-year-old self tell you to do right now? It's become very fashionable. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell your 22-year-old self? What advice would you, which is totally a useless exercise.
Right.
But to think about what your 80-year-old self would tell you to do right now, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing to consider. Abacusgm.com, abacusgm.com. Jay Jackson, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Greg.